Thank you, Colleen. Welcome everybody to week 5. It's nice to be on this side of the camera. At the end of this series, I've been running the technology for the last 4 weeks, so I'm excited to be able to get my turn in providing you a little education. As we briefly discussed a little bit last week, we were, as a team, deciding whether biosecurity should be talked about first or last. And I think having it last is probably a good thing right now. And my goal today is to give you some really basic and practical biosecurity steps that you can practice at home in order to prevent any of those viral diseases. Here's our disclaimer. As mentioned just a few seconds ago, these are for educational purposes only. We can't diagnose any disease or prescribe any treatments. Please contact your veterinarians for any questions that you have that are specific to any disease diagnosis or treatment. So these really basic but essential biosecurity steps that I'm going to present to you today will hopefully be accompanied eloquently on how you can potentially and practically implement them at home. I am not a backyard chicken owner, but I think we can collectively come up with different ways or different accommodations that can work for you at home. But first, actually, what is biosecurity? And we can define biosecurity as the steps taken to prevent or reduce the spread of disease. We've talked over and over for the last 4 weeks that prevention is going to be your best key for minimizing the opportunity for those viral diseases to enter your flock. Backing up a little bit to what the origins of the word biosecurity means. Bio means life, such as studying biology in school. It's life sciences. Security is protection. So today, for the next few minutes, I'm going to give you some pointers on life protection for your flock at home. Really, I want to start by showing you a video that has been produced by the United States Department of Agriculture and their Defend the Flock program. This was released in the summer of 2020, and it's about 1 minute and 40 seconds long. Let me make sure I am sharing the appropriate sound. I should be. Colleen, let me know if the sound doesn't come through. And we're going to run through the 1 minute and 40 seconds, and really it's just going to dip your toes in the water about some of these basic concepts. When the video is over, that's when we're going to dig into a little bit more about what some of these things mean and how you can apply them at home. Give me a thumbs up if it's there. We can put the YouTube link in the chat box about where you can find that video on YouTube. But as I mentioned, it went really quickly through a lot of different concepts. So that's what I'm going to start with this afternoon. The very first concept that the video introduced was to purchase your new birds from participating breeders, hatcheries, and dealers that are certified with the National Poultry Improvement Program, or NPIP. This has been discussed in previous weeks, mostly with vaccination, but there's really strong reasons why this is even more useful for your flock to be introducing new birds, because these breeders, hatcheries, and dealers are already certified of very devastating diseases such as pylori or fowl typhoid. Those are those minimum requirements that these facilities need to are regulated by in order to be NPIP participating. In addition to pylori and fowl typhoid, there are 4 other diseases that they can also be certified for, which above and beyond your basic NPIP certification is additional certification. And those diseases are avian influenza, Mycoplasma gallisepticum, Mycoplasma synoviae, and Salmonella enteritidis. Salmonella enteritidis is what affects us as humans commonly when we have food poisoning. So those 4 diseases are above and beyond certifications that your breeder, hatchery, or dealership could be certified free from through a series of testing and rigorous record keeping, etc. So the fact that those facilities are going through that process, that's really helping ensure that you are receiving healthy animals when they are coming on to your property. Continuing with keeping your distance is quarantining those new birds, chicks, or poults for a minimum of 30 days. We've also talked about quarantine in the past few weeks, but these steps are essential before commingling any of your flocks. Having young birds that will eventually be integrated into existing hens that you might already have. Those chicks have a vulnerable immune system as they are not fully grown yet, and they should remain separated. New animals, say you go to a poultry swap and you buy a few new show birds for your kids to exhibit in 4-H or FFA. Again, you don't necessarily know their exact whereabouts prior to your acquisition of them. Keep them separate for at least 30 days so that you can make any observations and learn how they are as well. When you have animals in quarantine, it is also very essential that you handle those birds at the end of your chore time. Every time. The end, every time. Work with your healthy existing birds first, and then work with your new birds last. That means pick their eggs last, go inside, wash your hands, clean and disinfect your boots, change your clothing. Feed and water your existing birds, then go feed and water your new birds. Number 2 is to keep it clean. This is where introducing some new terms comes into play, and these were introduced by NPIP in 2017 for commercial producers. But these are also terms that we are introducing to backyard poultry owners because they're pretty great terms, and you might be just learning about them for the first time today. The first is perimeter buffer area, or the PBA, and the second is the line of separation. So here we have, I'm going to turn on my pointer. Here we have an urban neighborhood, okay, a fictional term or urban neighborhood. You have the property in the center of the neighborhood, you have road on 3 sides, and you have backyard chickens. So the first thing you want to do is establish your perimeter buffer area. And this is going to be a boundary which your birds and everything needed to care for them is inside of. So we're gonna mark that with a red dotted line, and that's going to be your backyard, the side driveway, and part of the front driveway and the sidewalk. They don't need like your whole driveway because you generally don't keep your chickens out here. But this area that's marked, that's where you might have a fence line. That's where they are allowed to roam in the summer months, what have you. But it's also going to include the door of the back door of your garage, like a service door that you go in and out of to go care for your birds. So you want to make sure that that is inside the perimeter buffer area. The second term is the line of separation, and this is going to be a literal or physical marker that in order to cross that, you need to participate in certain protocols. Those certain protocols will be developed by you, and it may be as simple as putting on your chicken chore boots. It might be disinfecting your footwear. It might be wearing a certain set of coveralls that are designated specifically for your chicken chores. It might be that nobody can go past that line except for you and one other person who cares for your birds. Those rules can be flexible, but there needs to be some sort of rule that happens when you cross the line of separation. And for these purposes, I'm going to mark it with a yellow dotted line, although I think it just shows up as one big yellow line. So say, for instance, this is actually like a chain link fence that you have around the grass portion of your yard, and there's a gate right here. So in order for anybody to cross that gate to see your birds, they will need to go through a certain set of steps that you require in order to go see those birds. So again, the red line is a perimeter buffer area. The yellow line will be that line of separation. There are some other interesting questions, and even a question that came up last week after the presentation about whether wild fowl, like waterfowl, ducks, geese, can introduce influenza to domestic poultry. And yes, that is true. So having that perimeter buffer area is really pretty helpful in order to maybe keep some of those waterfowl out. They might still come from overhead, but if you have a fence line, they can't come into your yard, eat extra droppings, eat vegetables. Growing up, I lived like 3 houses down from the elementary school, and there were always geese on the football field, right, eating the grass seeds. So that would have been an opportunity to increase and encourage a space for wild fowl. And if you have backyard chickens that close, that can increase your risk. So having that perimeter buffer area, knowing you have some boundaries and what you know you need to keep clean, that will be helpful in the future as well. Continuing with keeping it clean, wearing separate clothing and boots. We've mentioned this before, especially when crossing that line of separation. And this might mean needing to invest a little bit of money to buy additional items, or say you have new running shoes or new athletic shoes, and the old pair, while still functional, turn into your chicken shoes. Or a jacket that might have been torn or has a stain on it now gets repurposed to be your chicken clothes instead of your going to town or going to work jacket. Wearing separate clothing and boots can really help delineate the difference between what we would consider the dirty area outside, which could potentially be contaminated with a virus or a bacteria, and then leaving those clothes, those items outside of the chicken area. And then you have only chicken specific clothing and boots, and washing your hands prior to crossing that line of separation. I can only see one person on my camera. How am I doing? Are we following along? Okay, Jennifer says yes. So separate clothing and boots. Yes, I'm aware it can be a little bit of an investment financially, but there are certainly ways to do it. When you have separate clothing and boots, you need to clean and disinfect them regularly. I just took my Carhartts that I wear in my horse barn out of the wash machine and dryer yesterday. Keeping them clean is an important part of your biosecurity. Even though they are barn specific or chicken specific, they still need to be cleaned and disinfected on a regular basis. You'll want to increase the frequency of your cleaning and disinfection when there are high risk moments. Our high risk for backyard poultry might look a little different than commercial. There's still high risk problems with commercial that can affect backyard poultry. But high risk are going to be things that you might participate in more frequently than you think you do. And this would be times that you're going to have new birds. That would be a higher risk period of time that you're going to want to really ensure that your biosecurity is on point. When you have a sick bird or a bird that you feel is ill and you are quarantining that bird because of any clinical signs, upping your biosecurity game is really important then as well. If you've been in direct contact with other birds, whether it is hiking somewhere and you have come across the walking path and there's some feces from wild birds, or you have neighbors that have chickens, or you've visited a farm store, those are the times where biosecurity is going to be really important, because you want to keep your chickens clean. And by doing cleaning and disinfection, that's going to help really ensure some biosecurity. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to actually go about cleaning and disinfection. You don't want to haul diseases home to your birds, and that can look so different depending on everybody's individual lifestyle. So on the last slide, I talked about visiting friends. So maybe you have friends or you have school-age kids and they hatched some chicks at school and you went and visited, or you went to go teach the kids how to handle the chickens, and now you've handled other birds that are not your own. If you live in rural Minnesota and have backyard poultry, be mindful of the other vehicles and equipment that are being driven around your property. They can easily pick up contaminated feathers from domestic or wild birds, contaminated feces, and contaminated soil possibly, and then track through your chicken yard and you really not knowing. Those would be like ATVs that are shown here on the slide, side-by-side vehicles, golf carts, lawnmowers even. So making sure that you can differentiate and have that perimeter buffer area that those vehicles don't cross into. Wild birds, again, we know poop happens, right? So they will defecate in natural ponds, swamps, wetlands. And for hunting dogs that would swim in those waters, they could potentially become fomites for diseases that could harm your chickens. Not necessarily a huge risk, but it could happen. Same thing with our pets. If we have dogs that roam the farm, who knows what they've walked through, and then they come into your chicken coop with you because they like to snuggle with one of your favorite hens. By no means am I saying to not have dogs. Just be mindful of how they navigate your property and sort of what their habits and what they like to do with you as a family as well, such as hunting. The last and the biggest picture on this slide are disposable booties, which are really easy to purchase at any local farm store like Fleet Farm or Tractor Supply or any of the online veterinary supply companies. And these are actually probably a really inexpensive way to always ensure that you will have disposable footwear that you could wear when you go to a friend's house and visit their chickens, or when you have guests coming to your house and they want to see your chickens or they want to learn more about how you care for them. Those disposable booties are really easy to tuck into the back pocket of your car or your truck. They're easy to have at the door. You can grab them on the way out, and they're a fairly inexpensive way to ensure that somebody's wearing what we would call clean boots as they enter your process or enter your property. Number 4 is exactly what this series has been all about, and that's to know the warning signs of diseases. Now, granted, we've only been talking about viral diseases, and these are images from Eliza's presentation in week 3. But knowing when something's not right with your birds is really a warning sign, and you need to be able to trust that instinct and quarantine that bird immediately, and then step up your biosecurity game, making sure that things are clean. You're not what I would consider double dipping between the healthy birds and the sick bird and going back and forth. So making sure that you're really diligent about your biosecurity practices. You can continue to learn about and understand these warning signs by setting up a veterinarian-client relationship. In extension, we're well aware, especially in the Twin Cities and other metro areas, that it's pretty difficult to find a small animal veterinarian that will work on poultry. Thankfully, we have veterinary students like Michaela and Eliza who hopefully will be able to serve you in the future, but we do know that that's a challenge. However, they do exist. So using the time now when your birds are healthy to seek out a veterinarian that you can establish that relationship with is really essential to have as your plan for when something is awry and you can connect with them. You can also review this webinar series on YouTube. Week 4 will be posted and published at the conclusion of tonight's webinar, and this webinar will be published next week. So they will be archived on the YouTube channel. You can always come back and visit them. Also on the Poultry Extension website at extension/UMN, sorry, it should be .umn.edu/poultry/poultry-health. There's actually a very good document written by Dr. Rob Porter, who you met last week in week 4, describing a lot of the common ailments with poultry. And he's a fantastic photographer and takes some really great photographs of things that they encounter at the diagnostic laboratory. So that document is available as well. And finally, knowing the warning signs is to be observant of your birds at all times. You will know what's normal for them, and then you will also know what's not normal. Sometimes in the horse world, we call it ain't doing right, ADR. So being observant, trust your gut, know that something isn't right, and then connect with those professionals that can help you and direct you. When you have those sick birds, it's essential to report them. Notify your veterinarian that you've been able to set up that veterinary client relationship with, or you can also contact the veterinarians at the U of M's Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory, and they might be able to help guide you through that process, whether you're sending that bird to the laboratory for diagnostics, and then they can help with the reporting, or they might direct you one-on-one to the Minnesota Board of Animal Health for further diagnostics to see what's happening with that bird. So it's essential to report that you have sick birds. as promised, cleaning and disinfection is super important when it comes to biosecurity. And I think we can all agree that the past 10 months, we've learned a lot about this topic for our own health. And there is a difference between cleaning and disinfection. And yes, there is a standard protocol for doing both. I win. There's first some definitions that I want to talk to you about that are associated with cleaning and disinfection. The first is detergent. And this is going to be a chemical product that you're going to use to disperse and remove organic material from surfaces. You have to clean first. Sometimes it just takes some soap, like our laundry does, right? The second term is a sanitizer. We're all familiar with this by now, and this reduces bacterial populations on inanimate environment. An antiseptic is what's used to reduce risk of infection on skin. These products are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. Sorry, I'm having challenges today. There's your sanitizer. Here's antiseptic. Next is going to be actual disinfectant. And these are going to be used on inanimate surfaces to destroy or eliminate specific infectious agents. Those chemicals are regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency, and they can also include heat or UV light. I think maybe some of us are probably getting familiar with that as far as the coronavirus goes, that under high heat, you can eliminate that virus, or UV light. There's products now that you can put your cell phones into that can disinfect your phone, and those are what's using UV light. The final term that I want to bring to your attention is a sterilant, and that destroys or eliminates all microbial life on an inanimate object. This can also be heat or UV light. So what's important to know and to keep track of are the use of the detergent and the disinfectants. That's what we want to use for our cleaning and disinfection protocols. So, how do we actually clean and disinfect things? As I mentioned, they're two distinctly different processes. And to start with cleaning, you want to dry clean the surface first. Wash it with a detergent, rinse it, and allow it to dry completely. When you choose your disinfectant to use, you want to apply the disinfectant, read the label, because they will all have a specific duration of contact time that they need to be on that surface. Don't spray it and then wipe it off. The same goes with our bleach or our Clorox wipes or whatever disinfectant we're using in our houses. The same thing, apply it and allow that contact time to sit there. It needs to be wet for that prescribed length of time. Some of the disinfectants may say to rinse it because it might be harmful or caustic. But other than that, you need to allow that to dry completely for it to work in its full effect. So there's 6 really simple steps divided into 3 cleaning steps, 3 disinfection steps. And finally, our last step is to communicate and share what your biosecurity protocols and expectations are on your property. You need to share them with your neighbors who might also have birds, with your family members who aren't directly involved with their care. They need to know what your expectation is. For any family members who might come to visit you, or friends or other neighbors who come, just communicate and share that you want to keep your birds healthy and that there's simple things they can do while they're at your house to help you enforce your biosecurity protocols at home. So for more information, you can visit our website, extension.umn.edu/poultry. or head to that Defend Your Flock webpage, and that's healthybirds.aphis, which is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, .usda.gov.